Imagine a town of thousands. Now imagine that population vanishing in a single day, leaving their homes, schools, and hospitals exactly as they were. Preservationists call this state arrested decay. It occurs when a building is frozen in the exact moment it was left behind, suspended between its original purpose and its final collapse. This leaves a trail of physical evidence that signals an immediate stop to daily life. In the ruined streets of Oradour-sur-Glane, empty tram tracks and stone walls remain exactly where they stood when the village was destroyed in 1944. Exploring these sites creates the sensation of stepping into two timelines at once. You are standing in the present, but you are directly confronting a vanished reality that is still physically occupying the space around you. These structures serve as frozen historical crime scenes. They show us how quickly a functioning community, with its complex layers of infrastructure and daily routines, can be reduced to a collection of silent rooms. The most sudden trigger for this type of ruin is catastrophe. It happens when a chaotic event forces an immediate, absolute evacuation. In April of 1986, the core of the Chernobyl reactor building exploded. The disaster forced the total evacuation of Pripyat, leaving a city of 50,000 people to become an uninhabitable exclusion zone. Radiation provides a unique form of preservation. Because the threat is invisible and lethal, it keeps the city permanently hostile to human interference. Nobody can return to salvage or rebuild the site. The result is a ghost town that feels like a museum. When thousands of people flee an unseen killer, they leave behind the set pieces of interrupted lives, like unmade beds, scattered abandoned paperwork, and chalk still sitting on blackboards. Catastrophic abandonment proves that even our most heavily engineered modern cities depend on a delicate balance of technology. If that balance fails, a metropolis can be erased in a single night. While catastrophe is sudden, resource exhaustion is a slow, terminal decline. It is the end point for settlements built entirely around a single, finite material. In the American West, towns like Bodie, California, thrived during the gold rush. When the gold veins were depleted, the population of 10,000 vanished, leaving a boomtown to become a high desert ruin. This pattern repeats in drastically different environments. While Bodie was defined by sprawling dirt roads, Hashima Island in Japan was a dense concrete fortress built in the ocean for a single purpose: deep undersea coal mining. When coal was replaced by petroleum in the 1970s, Hashima became obsolete. The mines were shut down, and the island's entire population was cleared out in just 3 months. This chart shows the direct mathematical relationship between resources and survival. As the yield from the ground is plummeting, the dependent population count drops with it. When the material hits zero, the town dies. The death of these towns reveals the reality of industrial dependence. Our most permanent-looking settlements are only as viable as the raw materials we find beneath them. There is a third trigger for abandonment: institutional exile. These were places designed from the start to separate marginalized populations from the rest of society. State planners systematically selected isolated rural hilltops for massive asylums to keep the unwanted out of public sight. Notice the land uses listed on these maps. The only neighbors were sewage disposal sites, borrow pits, and wetlands. Built using the Kirkbride plan, they featured massive Gothic towers and radial wings, designed to warehouse thousands of patients in a single imposing structure. When modern community care replaced institutionalization in the late 20th century, these multi-million square foot complexes were shuttered. They were too large to repurpose and too expensive to maintain. These ruins are unsettling because they were built for the specific purpose of exclusion. They decay alongside the history of the marginalized people locked inside. A modern subculture known as urban exploration now seeks out these forgotten spaces. To preserve the timeline of the ruins, they follow a strict code: take nothing but photos, leave nothing but footprints. But abandoned buildings actively defend themselves against trespassers. Explorers navigate severe physical dangers, including toxic black mold, deadly airborne asbestos, and the risk of structural collapse. This draw is often tied to sensation seeking. There is a documented psychological rush that comes from confronting a space that housed misery or disaster, and then returning to safety. Despite our attempts to document these sites, Humanity is no longer in control. Nature is the final master, tearing down the structures we left behind. We see this environmental reclamation in places like Kolmanskop, where the decaying Quartiermeister building is swallowed by the sweeping sand dunes of the Nemib Desert. We return to these sites because they show us what happens when we stop trying to hold back the environment. They are physical proof that without constant maintenance, the natural world will eventually reclaim every single structure we build.